Happy Friday, artists. I'm really glad to see you and glad to be here for another drawing this week. Um, I am here with a drawing that was inspired by a discussion I had with Emily from Prince of Peace. We were emailing back and forth about some artwork she submitted, some very beautiful artwork she submitted. Um, she's got a great talent. It was very fun looking at her work. Um, and she inspired me to think up a little village scene. And I did this village scene. This is the village scene we're going to be drawing. I did this inspired by imagining some of these old European villages um, that still stand today, but that have that feeling of a place from a long time ago. So I have a church over here, maybe a government building, maybe an inn or another type of multi-purpose building, pub or something. And then over here, maybe a house, some trees. So I've got a lot of details, but this again is 1 point perspective. So this is the drawing we're going to get used to. We're going to get to this in a second. We have to just explain some of the norms, right? This is art. So we anticipate our mistakes. We respect the creative process and we try till we're satisfied. Today for our drawing, we are going to need a pencil. You can use a regular HB pencil, number 2 pencil, whatever. My pencil is an art pencil, but it's still an HB. It's still a number 2 pencil. Just doesn't have the eraser on it and some of that nice coating. This is a little more slippery, a little harder to use actually than a regular HB. So here we have no eraser. So we do need an eraser just to get rid of some of those extra lines that I might be drawing. All right. We're also going to need a straight edge. Again, I'll repeat this for the umpteenth time, but this was just folded out of a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, folded with a nice crease on the edge, just so that all of my lines are really, really nice and straight. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I have my perspective point at the top, middle top of my paper. Doesn't have to be centered. It's just sort of a deciding place to where I'm looking. And I'm going to draw a line at the bottom of my picture so that I can establish a place where to begin my road. I'm going to erase this line later on, but for right now, it's a guiding point. And I'm just going to choose the width of my road at the bottom. So maybe about the width of my 4 fingers or so. And I'm just going to put dots on either side. And this is the beginning of my road, sort of at the bottom of my picture. And then I'm just going to take my pencil and I'm going to draw a line from the bottom dots, from both of those dots to my vanishing point, my perspective point. And this right here, this is looks just like a triangle. Looks like a triangle, and but really this is my road. So, and then I'm just going to choose a place to start creating a building. And this building is going to be drawn just like you would draw a house, when you were in first grade, right? A rectangle with a triangle on top of it. This is the side that's going to face the viewer. And so it's going to be completely, it's going to be completely non-distorted. This side is going to be a rectangle and a triangle on top of it, or a square and a triangle on top of it. And I'm going to draw one more of those square or rectangle shapes with a triangle on top of it over here. The nice thing about these shapes, when you draw the shapes that are facing you, it just looks like what it is. There's no perspective to be had. So you don't have to worry, I'm going to maybe put a little L-shaped house. So this side is going to be, I don't know, I'm just going to wing it a little bit. But these shapes, I don't have to do anything to them quite yet. So as you can see, I just have my regular, these shapes don't have to have any perspective yet. They don't have any anything other than just a very simple shape. And I'm going to draw one more. We're going to, this, as you can see, my rectangle is parallel to the bottom of my page. So that's important to notice. And I can use the bottom of my page and my ruler sort of as a guide. It's not going to be perfect, but if you look and see when your ruler is set down, make sure that it's even to the bottom of the page or set it up. You can use that as a guide. So I'm going to draw another house picture. And this one also will be, I think this will be the church. So we'll draw a nice long rectangle. And again, this is the side that's facing me. So the bottom is straight across, the sides are straight up and down, and the top is straight across. And you try to mark that. I try to mark that by using the sides of the paper. So it's straight with the line that I drew at the bottom, straight with the bottom of my page. And I try to even kind of correct it. Mine's a little off. So I'm correcting that. And then I just make sure my line's going straight up and down, or straight. And then this side, I'm going to sort of make an angled roof. On this side. And I'm going to draw just two angled sides. And then I'll put a little mistake there, sorry. I'm going to draw a rectangle on top of the roof, and this will be for the steeple of the church. And on top of that rectangle, I'm going to put another rectangle. I'm going to get a little closer so you can see this. I have it's a rectangle, it's a square, close to a square. And I'm going to put a smaller rectangle on there for the bell tower. I'm imagining that there's a bell in there. And then I'm going to put a triangular roof on the top of this. Maybe add in a window or two. Just kind of erasing the, and I really want to draw in another building, but as I try to do this, I don't know where, once I draw my perspective points, where this church is going to end and where it's not, where it's going to begin. So as I look at this, I can tell that this isn't going to work. Where is my church going to end? How do I know? Well, I don't until I've drawn this. So what you need to do in every perspective drawing is you need to draw the things in the foreground and make sure that those things, either you can draw them second and erase behind them, or you can draw them first and then set these drawings back. So now to draw the perspective, I take every corner. So the bottom corner, the corner where the roof meets the side of the house, and then I can recognize, and then I can draw one, the side of the house. If I match the straight up and down line of the side of the house, I can create that original side, and then I can just connect my roof. I'm making a slanted roof at the edge, so I'm going to connect my roof to that side. And I'm just going to alter this little edge of the roof. It looks a little off to me, so I'm just going to alter that edge. Stretch it out just a little bit and pull down the side of my house, or the side of the church. I'm just going to erase a couple of those lines. And then I'm going to take the same lines. This looks like it's not going to be correct. So I'm going to take the corner of my steeple, the first one, and then the lower corner of the steeple, and I'm connecting both of these in straight lines to my perspective point. Now, straight up and down line will show me where the side of the steeple ends. I'm going to connect the next part of the steeple, that top rectangle. I'm going to connect that to the perspective point. Again, it's going to look really strange. And then, so that top where the roof meets the top of the rectangle, and then the very tip top of the roof. And now, if you can see what I'm doing, I have to draw a straight up and down line, and then a slanted line matching the original lines I drew. So I can color that roof in just a little bit, add a couple windows, and that gives me a little bit of, looks kind of real. I like my favorite part, put the grass on top. And you can see that those lines, they might look wrong when you first start drawing them. I'm just going to shade in the roof for the meantime. So those lines can look a little strange when you first start drawing them. However, it's important to notice that when you're drawing these lines, they might not look right, but if you just keep following the idea behind them, that'll turn out for you. So I'm just going to draw in some windows for the church. Nice, tall, rounded windows at the top, flat at the bottom. These just make it look a little more like a church. Maybe just draw a big rectangle. The doors are probably inside this rectangle somewhere. And to find out the top of the doors, I just draw a line to my perspective point, and a straight up and down line. I can color that in, and I just get a nice clear shape on the side of my church. So if you can see, we're going to do the same thing on this side. But the thing about the house on the other side is that those perspective points are going to be drawn toward the same vanishing point. So they're going to be drawn on this side toward that vanishing point. So you're going to see the opposite side of these buildings. So I'm going to take the bottom corner and draw a line all the way to the perspective point. I'm going to take the edge where the roof starts to slant, and then I'm going to take the top of the roof, and all three of those lines I'm going to draw lines to my perspective point. So you can see them going all the way back. This house or building is not that big, so I'm going to draw a line that is parallel to the original line of the roof, and then matching that straight up and down line. And this is what gives me the end of my house. So my line was not parallel to my original line, so it looked a little strange. I'm going to erase that a little bit. So if your house looks a little strange, if your building looks a little strange, you probably did not create a parallel line, and that's something you can go back in and fix. And then, so when I draw windows on this side of the building, I have to draw these windows first, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to draw them in a row. And then to find out where to draw my other windows, I'm just going to see where the top of those windows are, and then I'm going to draw a line all the way to the edge of the front of the building, and then I can draw that window back toward the perspective point. Once I draw that window back toward the perspective point for the top of the windows, I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. And this is pretty tricky because I'm going to mark it at the edge of the wall and then draw it backward. So my windows have to fit in between those two guidelines. And so I'm just going to kind of draw them in, and they're going to get smaller as they go back. And so they're not going to be, I'm just going to draw straight up and down lines or squares, but they're going to be, because they're on an angle, they're actually trapezoids. So this is a tricky part. I can promise you this is not as easy as you would think. And then I can put in a second row of windows. And once I get these windows in, I'm going to have to, again, measure the top of the windows and draw that line over to mark the height of the windows at the edge. And then I'll mark the bottom of the windows, and that will give me my guideline. So over here, I'm going to figure out where the top of the windows, where the top of all three of those windows is, and the bottom of all three of those windows. And then I'm going to do the same for the third set of windows. I just made a little mistake in here. And so this is a straight across line on this side. But then to create those windows on the other side of the building, I can't just draw squares. I have to draw lines to guide myself. So I make sure from that edge where the top of the windows are and where the bottom of the windows are, I'm drawing toward my perspective point. And the windows have to fit in that row. So that row is moving back in space, and it's got this look to it. So you can see, and then I just match my windows up and down. I draw them in that row. They must be in that row. And this line forms the tops and the bottoms. So I'm just forming the sides when I draw them in. I'm going to put a door on this side because we need a door. And so now I basically have a few buildings. I can erase those lines now in between the windows so that you don't see the guidelines that I drew, but you can see how that creates the windows. And I can erase the rest of my perspective point, or my perspective lines. I don't need those now that I've drawn the end of the building. I leave my road there, though. Make sure to leave your road. But erase all those other lines, because then we're going to use that space to put in another building or another few buildings. And so you can add as many buildings as you want. You just have to know that anytime you're adding something behind another thing or in front of another thing, solid objects obscure each other. And that means that, so I'm just going to match this. These two buildings are going to be, I don't know, I kind of want them to be identical like those little European villages. So maybe I'm going to space them out a little bit, but match that line toward my perspective point to sort of see where I should draw my next side of the building. And this side of the building faces me, but because it's behind another building, I don't see most of it. I just see a little bit of it. And then again, I just, I'm going to just throw a window in there. That side looks too big. I'm going to draw the top of the roof from the apex, from the top to the perspective point. I'm going to draw that line all the way to the end. And again, where the roof meets at the gutter, where the roof meets the side of the house. And then I draw an angle. I'll follow this angle, draw the same angle over there, follow the side of my house, that straight up and down line, and draw it over there. I can erase the rest of my perspective points, and here I have another building that's the same, but look at how small that building gets. Okay, so imagine that if I draw any more windows, they're going to be really going back in space. Okay, so now I can put my building in here, and I actually have to put it back pretty far. And so I'm just going to draw the lines of mine back to my perspective point, except on this side. So you can see and draw my roof, and then straight up and down, match that side to create my side. Then I can shade the roof in. Erase the rest of my perspective points. And I'm going to end my road at the end of this building by drawing a straight across line. And then I'm going to draw one more building in the back. It's hard to keep those straight up and downs. Every time you can, match them to the side of the page. Okay, and I've got this last little building in there. Sort of smaller than all the rest, but more like a little shed. And then I'm going to just color in these roofs, get this colored in. And there I have the perspective pieces of all of my drawings. Now I have to add details. Here's the end. Now I'm going to put in my horizon line. And I'm just going to do that by, notice that I'm putting it in below my perspective point. So I'm going to just draw this line across, and it's going to kind of go across the whole page. And I'm going to add some trees in, and then just extend the line out, add some tree shapes. And when I say tree shapes, I mean like groups or clumps of trees, because by the time you get that far back, you can't see. You can't really tell what those shapes are necessarily, especially if they're all packed together. So I'm going to draw that line all the way across. And now, once I've drawn that across, I can kind of see about what size the windows should be on this building. I kind of mark it to see what size are the windows on the other buildings at that far back. And so they're a lot littler than they are in the front building. I'm drawing a little dormer on this little square roof up there. Maybe some shade in the roof there. And a couple more windows. And again, these are small. These are smaller than the windows that I used in the beginning. On that bigger, closer building. So if you have to go back through and look at this, it could be really helpful for you to pause this video or rewind. You may not be getting it. Perspective is hard because you have to draw the lines even if they don't look right, and then just kind of keep working with it. So I'm just shading these trees really lightly. I still don't have a light source, so I don't know where my shadows are going to be. I'm really close to determining that. I have to just imagine it in my head. So I'm going to color in the sides of the roof. A little bit darker. I need to make them darker than the trees that I just colored in. They weren't very dark considering the trees. And so to make them pop out, I have to make them more prominent than the trees. Put a little chimney in there. And then I can actually color these windows in too. Not windows, roofs. And if I color these roofs in, that starts to kind of make my picture look a little bit more realistic. I use cross hatching. It kind of makes my roof more even, and it gives it the feel of sort of regularity or shingles. So going both directions. Now you can see those, and you can see that even though it might look strange, this is really what the roof is going to look like when it goes back in space like this. And then little roof back there, the roof on this building. And I can definitely darken up the roof on the church. So what's really left now is to put in some more details like trees and to establish the light source. So I need to establish where my sun is going to be coming from. And that is once I've decided that, then I can begin to put in the shadows. I'm going to make sure I just draw in these windows really quickly. Okay. So I can darken in any of these. This doesn't take too long, but now that I know, now that everything looks right, I feel much better darkening it up. But until I know that it looks right, I draw it really lightly so that I can always erase. Okay. So I'm going to erase the bottom of remember I told you I was going to erase this bottom line. Now we sort of just, I can draw in some bushes near that little building, maybe a tree. And that's not a terribly tall tree, but it's not terribly small either. And then I just give this road a little bit of organic texture, some grass along the side of the road, and the grass will be visible really close to us, but as we get further back, just like the windows got really small, the texture of the road will get less and less. Okay, so I just want to now imagine my light source. So if the sun is shining this direction, all of my shadows are going to come out, and I'm going to draw them with the perspective point in mind. So I'm going to draw them straight. I'm going to have the sun come in from the left and then draw the shadow in on the right side. So the sun is coming from the left and the shadows are going to come in on the right side, which means that right side of the building is going to be all shaded. So I'm going to color that whole right side of the building in. I'm coloring right over the windows. I'm coloring right over everything. And you can now see that this is a trapezoidal shape. The side of the building is actually a trapezoid. And then I'm just going to pull my shadows out straight. So they come straight out, just depending where the sun is, but I have them coming straight out the side, all three of those buildings. And I'm going to create that same shadow at the back of the church also, coming off the same side of the church. And put a couple windows in. And this feels like it's either a hospital or maybe an inn or something, or a government building. I'm not quite sure, but okay. So now I imagine everything that is three-dimensional having a shadow, and that shadow for everything, including all of the buildings, all of the trees, will stick out straight to the right. Okay, and when you just take a look at this, so that tree right now, that tree does not have a shadow, and once I put a shadow in, I can add in some other trees over here. And these trees are just sort of, notice I don't draw just a triangle for a tree or a circle for a tree. I'm just sort of using some side-to-side lines. And, trees are not perfect, so if you draw them like they're not perfect, they'll look more realistic. On the other hand, if you draw them like a perfect triangle, they won't feel quite as realistic. So now I can put the shadow in. I know the shadow's going to the right and everything, so I'm going to put the shadow on the right-hand side of the tree. And of course, the shadow sticks out to the right. Now, this is not a lot of trees. If I had more time, I would add in many trees. I'm going to add in one over here. And notice how I just kind of lightly draw this in. Just going to give you a quick, I want you to see how this sort of looks. Very very, very organic. It doesn't look like a perfect tree. And the shadow out to the right. And there you have it. Here is our final drawing. You can add in, I think this drawing is basically done. I could add in more trees. I could add in bushes. I could add in a whole bunch of different things. I'm going to actually add in some more trees over to the right side of the drawing. That tree line, that horizon line. I didn't really get that in there, but now that you have this basic drawing, you can do a different one with different buildings, try it again if it didn't feel like it worked out the first time, and you're really good to go. This is a great job. Whew, we did it. We made it through. If you didn't get the drawing that you were hoping for, I do want to give you a quick example. So in this sketchbook, I had made a New Year's resolution this year. And in my resolution, I had decided that I was going to keep all of my sketches in my sketchbook, good, bad, whatever they were. And some of the students were asking to see my sketchbook. We were talking about resolutions, and some of the students were asking to see my sketchbook. And as I went through a couple of my pictures, they noticed that I had drawn the same face twice, or as they said it, they said, "Oh, why did you draw the same face twice?" And I said to them, "Well, I didn't really draw the same face twice. I said, I drew this face, and this was the initial face that I had drawn right here. But this, believe it or not, I know when you're looking at my drawing and you're thinking, oh, that's really good, Mrs. Herbst. That's not a mistake. This actually turned out to be a mistake. It turned out to not be what I wanted to get. You didn't have the result. All the proportions weren't right. And I was drawing from a photograph. So because I was drawing from a photograph, I really wanted it to look more like that photograph. This looks much, much more like the photograph. So what I had to do was I had to draw all the way up to this point. And this was pretty far in the process, right? This was about a half an hour or 45 minutes of drawing already. And then I had to suddenly say, oh, I can't make this work. And so I flipped the page and I started again. And I did get, thankfully, because I had my proportions all worked out in my mistakes in my mind, because I had all my proportions worked out, I knew that I could do it much better the second time around. So if you don't quite like the drawing that you drew for today, if you feel like, oh, this is not what I wanted it to be, I don't know if I can get it, or maybe I want it to look a little different than this. Please, please start that drawing again, try it again, and see what you can get out of it. I think that practicing things more than once, multiple times, really helps our brains to form around the truth of the matter. And in this case, my truth of the matter was a photograph. And I think if I had tried to just make that picture work, I don't know that I would have been so satisfied as if I had, as if the way it is now, I have a mistake, pretty big mistake still left in my sketchbook. And I'm actually quite happy with it. It's a good reminder to me that even as many times as I've drawn these pictures, portraits of people from photographs or pictures, even as many times as I've drawn these things, it's still just as easy for me to make just as big a mistake as probably any you guys have ever made. So as far as that goes, I just wanted to let you know that you may not have gotten the perfect drawing during this session today. This is a pretty tough one. If you didn't, look at the things that pop out at you and say, this isn't quite what I was looking for. Once you find those things, you are on the first step to changing them or to drawing them better the next time around. So please send me your drawings. You guys are awesome. It's fabulous to hear from you and to experience your art firsthand. So thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a great weekend, actually. Have a great weekend and then a great week. And I'll see you next Friday. Take care. Bye.